Welcome to another lesson with Don Potter. We're studying Beyond Basic Phonics, English Morphology 101, and we are now going into a new phase of our study. We've looked at the prefixes, Anglo-Saxon and Latin, or Romance. We have looked at the suffixes, Romance. But now we're going to be looking at the roots, R-O-O-T-S, roots of the Romance layer. I call this the heavy lifting part of our program. And you will be able to increase your vocabulary of the words that you know and that you can read and that you can spell. And it's at this level that you're able to greatly expand the words you read beyond the 3rd and 4th grade into 5th, 6th, 7th, middle school, high school, and so on. Now we're looking at roots. The question is, what is a root? You may be thinking of the root of a tree, which that's a pretty good illustration. The root of a tree holds a tree up. If you don't have a root, the tree is going to fall over. So the root of the word is really the one that has the central meaning of the word. And so let's take a look at this. A root is the main part of a word. It is the part to which prefixes, we've already studied a lot of those, they go on the front of a word, and suffixes that go on the ending of the word are added. The root usually receives the accent in Latin-based words. Notice usually, there are some exceptions that we'll see, but generally speaking, the accented syllable, that's the loudest syllable, will be the one in the words below that is in bold or dark print. Roots are valuable patterns for decoding and spelling, and let me explain that. Decoding simply means looking at the word and getting the sound and the meaning of the word. That's decoding the word. Spelling, on the other hand, is thinking of a word and then putting it into letters. And by the way, spelling is perhaps the most important subject taught in school, because spelling affects decoding more than decoding improves spelling. So I highly recommend that you think in terms of remembering how to spell these words, not just read them. Pressing on. They are also valuable, that is the roots, for learning new vocabulary to enhance your reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Let's jump right into the lesson. The first one is the first root, Latin or Romance root we're going to be studying is rupt, which means to break or burst. So first of all, we have a rupture. If you poke a pin in a balloon, you will have a rupture. That is to say, it's going to break. In the earth, you can have a break if you have an eruption of a volcano. And notice the E is long at the end of a syllable. And we can take erupt and turn it into a noun by adding T-I-O-N, and now you have an eruption. Corrupt. The R here is a disguised prefix, as you'll remember, and the N assimilated to the R, the next letter. It's a chameleon or disguised prefix. Corrupt. And a corrupt person is somebody that you can't trust. And when someone is corrupt, we say that leads to corruption, the noun form. And if somebody can be corrupted, they're said to be what? Corruptible. And we have the IBLE, Latin or Romance. If I say Latin, I'm talking about Romance, Latin, and French. Sometimes I just say Latin as a shortcut there. So corruptible is somebody who's able to be corrupted. maybe he's a politician. If you give him enough money, he will pass legislation for you, even if it hurts everybody else. He's corruptible. He can be bought out. But if you have a politician that cannot be corrupted, they're called incorruptible. They cannot be broken into. They cannot be bought out. And again, you have two prefixes, one suffix, and then we have the root to make that word. So the beauty of what we're learning now is if you didn't know what the word incorruptible meant, you could figure it out by looking at the parts. That's called the morphemes. Next we have bankrupt, and this is one of those exceptions where the accent is actually on bank. You don't say bankrupt, it's bankrupt. Well, I'll take that back. It can be a noun, bankrupt, or you can bankrupt. And so where you place the accent determines if it's a noun or a verb. But bankrupt, let's just simply look at this. So rupt means to break, and bank's where you put your money. And so if the bank goes bankrupt, your money is not worth anything. You can't get it out. Then you have abrupt, when you do something abruptly, really quick without thinking about it, abrupt. And you add ly, you get an adverb, abruptly. Sometimes I'll explain these prefixes, and sometimes I will skip them to save time. Next week, and here I'm going to skip it. Here we have interrupt. And so we have the prefix inter, which we have studied before. And so when you interrupt somebody, you break in to the conversation. Disrupt, if you have an interruption, that means you disrupt the conversation. So two people are trying to talk and you disrupt them by being rude and speaking out of turn. And that's one thing that we seek to teach all of our students, not to be disruptive, but to be kind and considerate. Next we have disruptive. Oh, that's interesting. Now we have the Romance prefix there that means able. So now it's able to be disrupted. Erupt, here we have another chameleon prefix. We got the N, and the N turns into an R before. So we take off the disguise when we think back through how that worked out. So we have the euphonic changes, I like to call it, good change. So it sounds better. Erupt. Inrupt doesn't. And erupt is when somebody like breaks into your house. And then we have interruption. So we took interrupt up here and added tion to make it a noun, an interruption. Number two, port means to carry. So we have the chameleon prefix m, which actually is in, right? And the n has assimilated to the p. And so now it becomes an m, which may I say are two bilabials. Or you use your lips, import. Just try and say import. Very difficult. So to make it easier to say, we changed this, but it still means the same thing. It still means in. Ex means out. So export is when you send something to another country. You export it out. You carry it out of your country. Oh, by the way, I didn't bring that out. Import means to carry in, right? So you got in. Port to bring it in, and export is the opposite. That's to carry it out. If you can carry it, you're able to carry it. So we use the suffix able. Portable. It's portable. We can carry it. Transport means to carry. Trans means across. So transport's to carry across. A truck traveling across America. It's transporting goods. And then the noun form is transportation, and I want you to notice the A there is a long A in front of the tion, transportation, and it's an open syllable, which explains why it's long. Now we have which is an agent, someone who does something. So we have a porter. A porter is someone who carries things, such as in a safari. Deport. If somebody's committed from another country, comes to our country and commits a crime, we may deport him back to his country for prosecution, and that is means out, so deport. again, report. When you write a report for your teacher, that's called a report. So you're actually carrying information that comes from somewhere else back. And then a reporter, we're going to put an ER to make an agent. And so just like porter is someone who carries, a reporter is someone who carries this information again. And then you have the ing suffix, which is the Anglo-Saxon present participle. So you have reporting. Then we have support. And that's very interesting because it's a chameleon prefix, and the B assimilated to a P because the first letter in the root was a P, so support. But you need to think back and say, well, that means sub, which means under, and support is to get under something and to what? Yes, to carry it. So you can see how these work. I hope this is exciting for you, and that you'll see how that even within, maybe before this week's over, you're going to be reading so many words that you couldn't read at the start of this study. This is a powerful study, and I'm very, very happy to present this program, and I hope thousands of young people and others watch it. Now we have form. Aha, that means to shape. What's the form of something? What's its shape? So reform just means what? To form again. So when you reform something, you form it again. So you got a different form. And then reformation, and when we pronounce this, the accent, we're going to pronounce it reformation. Okay, that's the noun form of reform. So when you reform something, you have a reformation. D means away from, so deform means away from the form. Maybe you made something out of clay and it didn't come out right, and it was deformed because it didn't look like the shape that you really wanted. And so now you got to go back and reform it. We have inform. This is really cool because you got the prefix in and form. So when you inform, you're explaining the shape, and the noun form is going to be information. And and then IVE in the next word, able, remember? So informative means able to inform. So when you read something that's informative, it's easy to inform. And I know it's a stretch, but that's kind of like to shape your thinking. Then we have transform, trans, across. And so when you transform something, and I'm sure that most of our kids today have played with transformers. It looks like a car or truck or something, or maybe a boat. And then you start moving the parts around, and now you have an action hero. And so that is transform, changing the form. And that gives us a what? A transformation with the long A again. Then we have a formula. Maybe a baby formula, or it could be a math formula. And that leads to the noun, you have a formula, that's because you have a formulation. Formulation. Boy, I love those long A's, formulation. Then we have formal. Maybe you went to a party and everybody's wearing really nice clothes, and the girls are all wearing gowns and the men are wearing tuxedos, and so what they wear has basically sort of the same shape, so it's formal. And then you can have informal, and here notice in can have two meanings. I'm sure you remember that. It can mean in or it can mean not, and this happens to have the second meaning, which is not formal. So maybe you have a wedding, they said it's informal, so you can wear blue jeans. And then con means with, and conform means everybody is going to have the same form or shape. And so you take what you want to do, but you conform and you make it the same as what everybody else is doing. I like to think of soldiers when they're marching. You ever notice how their legs and arms are all in sync? They conform to the drill sergeant. And that leads to a confirmation. A confirmation. And again, that can be like you get an airplane and you have a confirmation from them that you're going to have a seat on that airplane. Number 4, we have tract or to pull. We have OR. I hope you remember that's an agent. So a tractor is something that pulls something. And so you have a tractor to pull a plow. And if the wheels are spinning, you do not have traction. But if the wheels are connecting to the ground and you're pulling the plow, then you have traction. And we use this in all kind of ways. I'm hoping by learning all of these roots, you're going to get traction in learning more vocabulary. Attract means to pull to, and so when something is attractive, this is able to be pulled. So we take IVE and put on this word attract. And so attractive, maybe that's somebody that's pretty and people are attracted to them, or it could be a pretty picture and everybody's going over to look at this picture because it's attractive. It's a pretty picture. But if it's an ugly picture, you're going to say, oh, that is unattractive, and nobody's going to be attracted. Then we have attraction, noun form. And this is really cool because when you go to the fair, you're looking at all the attractions. So when you're walking down the fairway, you see all these booths and people saying, hey, come over here and throw the ring and win a teddy bear or something. And so that's an attraction at the fair. Extract, this makes me say ouch because I think about having a tooth extracted. So it means to pull, and X means out, so extract means pull out. And again, these are simply representative words. I could have put extraction, extractor. There's many other words that can be formed by putting different prefixes, extractable, on these. And so these are representative, but you're going to be able to take this information and run with it to other words. Now we have contract. Con means with, and tract means to pull. So when you sign a contract, you're agreeing with somebody that you're going to work together. You're going to pull together on a project or something. And OR is an agent. So a contractor is somebody who's designated to make sure that the contract is followed. And so when you build a house, you sign a contract to build a house, and the contractor, the person, the agent, is going to see that everything follows the contract. And so that's called contractual, like a contractual arrangement. If you just shake hands, that's one kind of agreement. But boy, when you sign your name to something and the lawyer puts his stamp on it, then that is a contractual agreement, and you cannot get out of that agreement unless both sides agree. So you're still pulling with someone. Now we got subtract. Oh wow, sub means what? Down, and tract means to pull. And so when you subtract, you're taking a 4 away from a 2, and you're pulling down, right? And you're going to have a 2. At least in my math you do. Protract, tract means to pull. Actually, protract is a meeting that you decided it was going to be 2 days, and then you decide, well, let's stay another day, so you protract it. And anything that you continue beyond what you were planning to do is to protract. The next word is a little different here. We have protractor, and this is what you use to measure angles in math. Retract, well, again, re means again, and tract means to pull, so it means to pull again. But in the way I use it, usually, if you make a statement, you say, "Wait, I want to retract that." That means you want to pull it back. You want to take it back. You got a different idea. You can also have a pen where that you push on the little clicker, and the point comes out, and you can write, and then you hit the clicker again, and the point goes in, and that's called retract. So it's pulled back or pulled again, but it's pulled in. And then a retraction, that is the noun form of retract. And so if you make a retraction, you say, forget that I was wrong. I want to take that back. Next we have distract, and that's when somebody get you distracted so you can't pay attention. I hope you're paying attention to my lesson right now and don't get distracted, because if you do, then that is a distraction, which is a noun form. So you can see again, we got the prefix, suffix, and the root. And oh, let's do one more with this distract. Here we got able, which means able, and so we have distractible. But you could put undistractable on the front of it. And you can take these, you actually take these and play with them. And the next one is abstract. Something that's abstract is something that exists in thought or as an idea, but not having a physical or concrete reality. Abstract. And abstraction is the noun form of that. So when you abstract something, you have an abstraction. That's a kind of a difficult word that you'll get the full meaning of later. Abstract can also mean to remove something, or it can mean, I'll read the definition, but it's pretty tough. Consider something theoretically or separately from something else, to abstract a notion. Anyway, we're going to stop with there. We're 20 minutes, kind of a long one. Stick with me on this. Watch this a couple times. Make sure that you can read. And if somebody asks you, what's that word mean? You should have a good idea of what to explain. So when you see it in a book, and then play with these. Make up your own words. You can make up your own language. It's fun. And come up with your own ideas and write sentences and poems and things using these words.